Hello, I'm your host, Dinah Lewis, and I welcome to you the Soul to Soul project page. I welcome this Wednesday's topic, The Boy Who Never Knew, Season 2, Episode 6. So as we await the platform to warm up, Natty, I see you there. Excellent, excellent. We're just waiting for Natty to join, who is my guest today. Hi, Gems. I see you. Hey, sir.
How you doing?
Good evening. Good evening.
Good evening.
Is sound check good your end?
Yep, mic check is good. Mic check is
Excellent. Let me just
good.
make sure volume's up my end. Good, 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 good. So we're just waiting for the platform to warm up. Thank you, Gemini.
Yep.
Thank you, Marcia. Welcome. This is your first time. I know you're joining me. You finally made it. Hallelujah. I hope you enjoy. I hope you enjoy. So thank you, Mr. Nate. Is it Nate or Nat? Nate.
Whichever one you prefer.
Well,
so you can call me Nate or you can call me Nat.
It is your name.
Yeah. Call me Nate then.
Nate. And Nate it is. Nate it is.
Yeah.
So as we well, for me, this is my second time going Instagram live. You're very familiar with this platform, so you know that Instagram only gives us 60 minutes before they boot us off. Is that correct?
That's correct.
All right. So should we still be in the midst of our interview and we have to go, we'll come back on, we'll rejoin? Yeah?
Yes. So if we need to speak more.
Excellent.
Yeah.
So hi Z, I see you there. Let me just wave. So
okay.
there's gonna be times when I'm gonna repeat the fact that I'm gonna be mindful of the time. In fact, let me do that right now. So I will let people know when we're going to shut down and rejoin, should in case we don't make it to the end of our show. So let me just welcome everybody. This is my guest here, Nate, and he is the boy who never knew. A topic with a twist. I can imagine. So this is my new platform that I'm gonna be doing my Instagram lives from. So normally it's the Soul to Spirit Mind Gym, which is done via Zoom, as we've shared. So I'm hoping that a lot of my followers have looked at where we are tonight and not gonna be signing on to Zoom, because I got told off 2 weeks ago. But you know what, we're here today and we'll take it from whoever's joining us, whoever's been good and paying attention to the promotions and the adverts that have been sent out since Monday. So good evening from wherever in the world you are joining us today. You could be anywhere, but you chose to spend this hour with myself and my guest. So I welcome all of you, and those who are first timers, like my dear Marcia, who's just given me a wave. Thanking you for being here, whether it was an invite or you have been lucky enough to watch previous recordings and want to be a part of this great conversation. It doesn't matter. You are joining myself and my guest, and that is supporting what we do. Right, Nat? And I thank you.
Correct.
We thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
So there's always housekeeping rules that have to be adhered to. All right. So all shows are recorded, and though we approach each platform with the utmost level of respect for our viewers, for this we are mindful that there may be topics discussed that are sensitive and personal to you. However, we welcome your opinions and would appreciate if you could refrain from any hostile comments as we endeavor to maintain a holistic platform to be openly discussed freely and from a place of authentic maturity. Yes? So if we please you, do tell us as well as others. Got to make sure you tell others, tell everybody, spread the word. And if we don't, then please kindly inbox us and we'll endeavor to put our wrongs right. Okay? So it's got to be said that, as I said earlier, for those of you who don't know Instagram, we are given 60 minutes, and should we not complete the interview in that time, we will log off and rejoin. Everybody come back, because it's always good to finish a show, because some people might like the beginning. It might resonate with some people at the beginning, it might resonate with some in the middle, and it might resonate with some towards the end. So you want to be sure that you get the total package, just to make sure. Yeah?
Yeah. All
right. This show comes with a warning. Our guest has a way of speaking, so you have to pin so you have to pin your ear to this live to pick up on the language or the dialogue, yeah, which involves rational inquiry into areas that are outside either theology or science. Well, probably inside science, more to the point. Would you agree on that, Nat?
I would definitely agree with that. I would say the science thing is where you stand on either side of whether you're a hard materialist or you believe that we actually don't know most of what nature's or reality is really about. So I'll leave that to the audience, but yeah, what you've said is correct.
See, you can already hear it. You can already hear it. Anyway, so today I bring to you our topic, the boy who never knew. So joining me is Natty Chin, an artist, a blogger, a poet, spiritualist. I think you're an incredible blogger, by the way.
You've checked out my blogs. I've not done any work in there in a while. I'm revamping my blog site at the moment.
I've checked you out.
Okay.
And would you also accept a philosopher at this point?
I would say yes, although I would say everyone is a philosopher in their own right. Even some of the most horrific people, so-called horrific people in history, have shown themselves to be philosophers. Philosophy is more about wisdom is more like the application of philosophy. So everyone has that innate potential and innate wisdom in them. So I'm just breathing in and breathing out and tapping into that which everyone has access to.
Well, you know what? I heard once upon a time that someone said to me, it takes all sorts to rule the world.
Yes, that's correct.
So with that said, we're all philosophers in our own right. Yeah? So welcome that to the Sole2Soul project. And as I said, this is my second time going live. So I am not going to try to repeat myself over and over again. So now, being all of the above, an artist, a blogger, a spiritualist, a poet, what others, and now at this point a philosopher, yeah?
Yeah.
People might question my catchy topic title and be thrown as to what would make you so. What would make you the boy who never knew? So, though funny, when I presented it to him, you got it straight away because you laughed.
Yeah.
He was like, yeah, I'm happy with that. And for me, that was the Holy Spirit laying that in my heart. So with that said, it was your poetry that I first came across, one particularly called Absent Father. And here is an extract from that poem. Before we go into the extract, Nate, tell us a little bit about who is Nat the poet.
Nat the poet is the sum total experiences, inner arguments, turmoils, conflicts, and revelations of the one called Nat. It's a sample of, or a snapshot of my life experiences and thought processes and reflections from the world back onto it as I know it. So my poems are a reflection of me, and in turn they're a reflection of humanity, even if the specific experiences haven't been experienced by others. They can experience or share in the emotions that I've been through and the challenges and the inner trials. At the base of it all, my challenges are rooted in getting to know myself and overcoming fears and understanding what love really is and what self really is. And everyone, at the root of any challenge, everyone faces the same questions.
And I think you've just said two very key components there. Well, identifying who you are and what love really is.
Yeah.
And I think, anyway, let me hold it right there because we're going to get into that along the way.
Yeah.
So, like I said, what I came across first of you was your Absent Father's poem. And this is an extract from your poem. And this is the opening stanza. This is what happens when 2 + 2 does not equal 4.
Yeah.
Like 2.4 children minus the 0.4. It feels like 4 points lost because I am keeping score. Feels like a false start from the very start. I started on all fours when I began this race, but everyone else had a head start on this track. Now, can you just take us back to the birthing of this beautiful, well-versed poem that you can get to, well, all of you can get to read when I give you Nat's information and all the wonderful other stuff that he's written. Can you take us back, Nat, to the birthing of this poem?
Okay. This poem was actually me thinking and reflecting on my upbringing and thinking about my father and recent developments in life. And it took me back to the beginning because I felt I hadn't honored my own feelings. And the only way I can honor my own feelings about my upbringing, in so much as far as his involvement, was to write about it, a form of therapy as such. I'm simply laying out the fact that I'm emphasizing the fact of how important it would have been to have a greater emphasis of him in my life. Not because my mother wasn't an outstanding parent, she was. I'm just denoting the fact that from the head start, from the get-go, as a child, when you know that you have two parents and one of them is not involved, it automatically does create this question of insecurity. It puts a doubt on your, or a price on your love from the other parent. Because why is it one parent's able to provide you a far greater love or attention than your other parent? Therefore, it already creates a bit of a chasm within yourself that one parent can try, but not necessarily ultimately fulfill, particularly when we talk about gender roles in any area of society. Therefore, I guess as a boy growing up, it was there was still a lost sense of purpose, simply not having that male role model within my life, even though my mum did her best and did some great things with me. Call it an imbalance, if you will, of masculine and feminine energy, in so much that there's no one force should dominate the other, because the universe doesn't really work like that. It's more so an understanding of the archetypes of the male within the world. So not necessarily a man, but the archetype of a father and a parent coming from masculine energy. I use the word archetype because we have a picture, an ideal of a father and the kind of love that they project and give to us, and the kind of assurance and safety they give us. Whether or not the father in reality actually matches that archetype is another question. But simply for the fact that that archetype wasn't present enough for me to build upon that, where else do what other reference point do I use for to gain that aspect of the man of the house or masculine energy? Where else do I have something to lean on? Becoming the man of the house when I'm a boy, it's an additional emotional burden as well. And then it also, I think one of the downsides is it forms a sort of approval seeking behavior. Well, this is from my experience, really. Simply because despite the unconditional love of the one parent, if the other seems to come in and out, you're never really sure about whether they love you enough or whether you're a priority. Therefore, that's why I say from the get-go, if we're aware in society that the majority of people have two parents, and I'm not saying there's nothing wrong with being a single parent, because life happens upon us and single parents can be excellent, but just by awareness of the fact that you have two parents and one of them is not involved creates an insecurity by admission.
Can I just interject there and ask you if you can confirm that where you've written, I started on all fours when I began this race? Did you start with both? Is that starting with both parents and one eventually disappears, or?
So essentially, my father was around for the first year of my birth, even though I wasn't aware he was around. So I start like everyone else.
Okay.
But then, yes.
Okay, thank you. Now, I just wanted to say to the viewers, when he speaks, I'm depicting the words, his tongue is a paintbrush, and the world is your canvas. And I just had this imagery, because my image can run with me when I hear people speak. That's why I want people to be pinned to his words, his dialogue, because this leads right into the next. It's even gone better, because you just, without even knowing how it's scripted here, you speak art. You speak art, and poetry is a spoken word art.
Yeah.
So I know that you are an artist. Is this before being a poet? Was this before being a poet? And where has your art taken you?
Okay. I think I always was an artist from a child. I think after a certain point in life, I just chose not to take note of those various aspects of me, the art side, the creative side. I think in life, sometimes the way in which life is structured has a habit of drowning out all those really creative sides of you. You grow up, you get an education, you go to university or whatever you choose, you get a job, you work full time, you get sucked up in various processes in life that tell you that this is how to be a productive member of society. But in the process, sometimes you forget who you are, and within you lies that ability to create, or to have the feeling of being a creation who is taking part in the event of creation, so to speak. Those I kind of dropped that creative side of me for a very, very long time. Just working, doing some of the things that people sometimes or usually do in life. You go out with your mates on a Friday night, and there's nothing wrong with these things. You take part in social activities. You never really reflect back on yourself. It's always about what you have to do to maintain a sort of veneer to survive in society. There's never any introspection. You're leaning on these other structures that we have in society to give ourselves a sense of purpose and worth. So I would say probably from secondary school all the way up to my 30s, I never went back into that box, that well of creativity, whether it was drawing, writing. It sort of got put to one side, almost as if it had no importance. The reality is, obviously, it couldn't have been further from the truth. I was pushing part of myself away and accepting something else that was put upon me, one for survival, because everyone needs to work and live. But I lost something significant when I did that,
Okay. Okay. Hold that thought, because I know that loss is going to come in the found of you along the way. We ain't giving it away so soon. So, in May of this year, you wrote in your blog titled The Identity Crisis.
Yeah.
A lot about yourself, but most importantly, you dedicated it to a new stage in your life.
Yeah.
So as not to give too much away, can you tell us very briefly, just in one sentence, this new stage? What is it and what makes it new?
The thing that makes this stage of my existence new is the fact that I'm willing to say yes and explore those thoughts and feelings that I normally would have held back on, or I would have questioned their morality within the context of someone else's approval or an adoption of someone else's dogma. I would say to myself, I need to give myself the freedom to explore these things, because they will give me a better sense of who I am and who I'm not.
Yeah. Are you still there? I can hear you.
I'm still here, yes. And
yeah, I'm just savoring your dialogue, your literature, your literacy, or is just so. Anyway, it's like a dessert. Can we get some emojis going up on this live? Come on, because you can't tell me that this man is not speaking a language. The poetry is just unbelievable here, even with you just explaining your whole existence. There's just poetry in that in itself. So you use the term dismantled and reassembled again for the better. Now that's a powerful statement. Dismantled and reassembled again for the better. Now, most people, for the word dismantled, I probably would use, for my own personal experience, would be revamp, or I don't know, from a psychological standpoint, there's another word that I would use, but dismantled and reassembled, like I'm quite good at DIY.
yeah.
Come, give me this essence of you.
It has to be, for me, it had to be a dismantlement, simply because I need to reconstruct myself. A dismantlement means to me there are certain parts of myself that I can no longer afford to or desire to keep. Therefore, when I recreate or reconstruct myself, that process is quite destructive, but not in a negative sense. Whenever we, myself included, whenever we go through trials and ask ourselves who we are, whenever we make big changes in our life, that is destructive. It's not only for us, but for people around us who want us to stay the old way, the old Nathan, the old Diana. It's destructive because it's harmful to ourselves in one sense, because we're attached to that previous version of ourselves. And so in order to do that, we have to break that, and that causes pain to us and to communities that we're associated with. But at the end of the day, it's necessary in order for us to rebuild ourselves and be stronger, feel more complete. Even if that's to the detriment of those who disagree with the new you or the authentic you, that's not our concern. If they truly love us, they would want us to explore this side of ourselves. If you truly love yourself, you owe it to yourself to explore the new you. Therefore, sometimes the other painful aspect of this dismantlement and recreation means losing friends or other people, which is as difficult as losing parts of yourself or your personality, because personalities are like masks. The things we put on the show for work, for certain friends, for our church gatherings, for the mosque, or whatever it is we do. And this is a truth. This is a spiritual truth, because in any religious text, in any spiritual group, in any philosophy, teaching of philosophy, there's always a deconstruction before a people or a person comes back to a sense of belonging or self. You spoke about the Holy Spirit. So in the Bible,
wait,
for example,
before you jump to that, because I know where you're going with this, right? I need to put this in there so it goes with this flow on this side of the fence. And that's where I know you're heading to. So you're on par with where I'm at. with the dismantling and the reassembling again for the better, would this have anything to do with your study of spirituality? And I just want to make sure, because I don't know, Gemini has said absolutely spot on, but I just want to just, for those who don't know what a spiritualist is and does, I just want to give you the 4 definitions that I come across, and then Nat can just confirm which one of these he is or isn't. Yeah. So a spiritualist is and does this: a person who believes that the spirits of the dead can communicate with living people.
Okay.
An advocate of the doctrine that the spirit exists as distinct from matter, or that spirit is the only reality. So a non-denominational spiritualist. And then you've got the adjective, which is relating to the belief that the spirits of the dead can communicate. Well, that's what I've just said. So spiritualism is a religious movement based on the belief that the spirits of the dead exist and have both the ability and the inclination to communicate with the living. The afterlife or the spirit world is seen by spiritualists not as a static place, but as one in which spirits continue to evolve. Now, the boy who never knew what before this point.
Okay. So I would say I agree with all of those statements, although that wasn't necessarily my definition of spiritualist. Interestingly, when I talk about being a spiritualist, I talk about one who seeks to go within themselves, one who understands or has an intuitive feeling that there's more to this world than the material world, and one who believes that anything is possible. So within that light, the thing that was missing from my world was a sense of identity, an identity not necessarily shaped by a particular group, but an honest and authentic answer coming from my inner self, that higher self, or that God self, or that stream of consciousness. That's what I'm referring to. That which we cannot necessarily prove exists with metrics, but that which we know to exist in some way, shape, or form, intuitively.
Okay. So, and if there's anyone who wants to put any questions to Nat, please put them in the comment box below. So, you shared with me that you had been in the church for 5 years. Is that right? 5 years?
That's correct. Yeah. True.
Your reason was that you had arrived at a place, hence the title, where you never knew where you were at, but you knew that you did not want to be here or there. Yeah?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. And in that moment, you reached for something.
Yes, that's correct.
What was it?
A sense of identity or belonging. The fact living every day just doing my job and going out for drinks in the pub wasn't enough for me, and it was becoming even more present. A growing, yawning, gaping hole. Something was missing, and it was really that I wanted to fill, and that's why I reached out and I joined that particular religion for a particular period of time. It was me searching for belonging, searching for being, and knowledge of self.
But you reached out. You picked up. What did you pick up?
I picked up a Bible at the time because it was what I knew from a child at that time. Yeah.
Okay. So there's people who are watching today who could probably resonate with this stage of your life.
Yeah.
What would you say to them in terms of recognizing this new stage and wanting to explore further?
Okay. To anyone who wants to explore themselves further, I would say whatever path you're on, not necessarily a particular religion, I would say you have the right and the freedom to explore these paths. If you're looking for an answer, the key thing here is you also have the right and the freedom with any spiritual path or religion you join, once you feel it's no longer serves its purpose to help you understand yourself, once it starts to confine you in understanding who you are based on its dogma, that you have the freedom to actually explore other paths or routes. I would say begin with the idea of love, because that's what sold me, and then keep going and keep going, and then ask yourself, in a year's time, do I feel like I have a place in this particular religion or group? If you find that it's stifling your ability to be you, to be to just be, and it's hampering your ability to love unconditionally or move towards unconditional love, then I would say you have the freedom to keep moving and explore other paths. So, and also don't be afraid to take the things that resonate with you in any dogma or doctrine, and discard the things that and question the things that speak contrary to that. The root of the answer here is you're being authentic to yourself, and authenticity is the thing that will allow you to love, because no one's been able to fully give themselves over or love others and themselves when they can't be themselves.
Thank you for that, Nate, Nat, and anyone who that question resonates with. I hope you were able to take it in and absorb it, and if not, you can ask it again at the end, and Nat will elaborate a bit more on that new stage of wanting to explore further. So, Nate, you speak in your work about wearing the mask. Before I ask you to give us in your own words, I also prioritize a lot of things when I talk about the mask. And within the word mask, you will find the word ask.
Yeah.
And some platforms ago, I asked, what is the world asking of you, and you asking of the world? So you have said in your writing that you prioritize your own labels, and you're constantly evaluating yourself against the many masks and identities that are either raised with, that we are either raised with or have incorporated into our being. And when I said to you about wearing the mask and what are we asking of the world and the world asking of us, does this sentiment resonate with your theory and life experience?
Yes, because it's important that we do this, because sometimes we're wearing masks that we inherited and we don't even know it. We're going along with things because our parents taught us this was the right way to act on it. Our education system did, and our workplace did, and our pastor did, and our imam did, and our did, and we never question it. We look at it from a position of powerlessness. We seek something external to anchor ourselves to. The interesting thing is, the reason why I use the word mask is because if we go to ancient Greece, this was about actors portraying different personalities and personas when they put this mask on the stage. In like manner, do we do the same thing in life? We're not the same way we go into the office as we are with our friends. We're not the same way with our partner as we are with the person on the street. In an ideal world, masks wouldn't exist. We would just be ourselves, which I understand is very idealistic. But ideals are necessary in order for us to work towards something. If you live by masks and you never challenge the masks you wear, all that means is that it gets harder and harder to know ourselves from the noise of all these different personalities and masks. It all becomes about, this mask wants me to act this way, but this is contrary to this. We don't ask ourselves. We think of ourselves as our personality or personalities, or we're too involved in the mind. We don't think about ourselves as a being with many facets, and those facets speak to one another. Some of those facets are temporary. In life, we change, and our personalities change as we go through life. That's just the normal thing. The thing that doesn't change is our essence, that which allows us to understand our sort of universal and grander desires to be part of a wider whole, to love, to experience an existence and physical life. Outside of that, a lot of things that we create, especially if we talk about, we can align this to various bodies that we have. Those bodies are influenced by the various personalities that we subscribe to or have attached to ourselves. It's some of the things that we hold on to that we think are permanent are actually temporary. You're not the same person you were 20 years ago, so therefore it doesn't. Therefore it doesn't help you in any way to hold on to the old you, because you realize that wasn't you and you changed. In like manner, do we do the same thing with how we interact with ourselves? It's a form of denial and deception and self-loathing if we don't acknowledge and honor what we truly want, and we continue to live within the existence of a mask. But that's because when do we get time in today's society to evaluate ourselves? The way society is these days, it's all very like fast paced. We're never given time to stop and think and contemplate. It's very pragmatic.
We've just got some comments here from Gemini Gemstar. She says we conform to the expectation of others. Yes, we do.
Yeah.
People pleasing and self-destruction. And I am Valance F. So the expectations of essential people in our lives that have been imprinted on us are part of the mask. Wow. Yeah. So with those questions and with what I'm going to ask you next, I've written here, people right now on this platform may feel different about their identity being shaped by society, or may not be able to understand your message you are trying to convey. So we've got two here that have conveyed their understanding. So for me, having studied sociology, which is the systematic study of society, this really helped me deeply in my understanding of self and environmental triggers.
Yes.
And also the line of work that I do and the conversations that I was willing to entertain somewhat 20 years ago to where I sit right now. So you wrote, to some, the first thing they see when they look at me is the color of my skin.
Yeah.
To others, it's my gender.
Yeah.
My big smile or my charm or lack of it.
Yeah.
To those who hear me speak, I'm an employee, a taxpayer, a son, a friend, an ex, a heterosexual, a sapiosexual, a wise man, a fool, a spiritualist, a conspiracy theorist, and is it apostate? Apostate?
An apostate. Yeah.
Yeah. A bastard, an enemy of the faith, an aspect of consciousness, or a blasphemer.
Yes.
And you wrote, my identity, depending on who you are, varies, and it is fixed and immutable. But to me, my identity is fluid and interchangeable, and also hierarchical.
Yes.
My question to you is, you have asked a question as to why do I use that last word where you wrote, well, I feel that many of my identities would not exist without society's need to create them. So with that said, how would you, well, you've just given us the answer to how the mask.
Yes.
And how you fit into all these different labels then.
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
society has placed on you. So hold on, what's this one? Our mask is mutable because it shifts depending on who the audience is.
Yeah. Yeah.
Quite
That's
rightly
yeah.
so.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I like that. I am Val. So it's not very often I come across philosophers. Poets, yes, but not philosophers. Though for me, my father is the closest yet. And I'm a great fan of Plato, Aristotle, and
Okay.
Confucius,
Yeah.
which came around during my studies of law and politics, and hence how I was introduced to Greek philosophy. Now, whilst researching this topic, I came across 4 definitions of a philosopher,
Yeah.
and they are a student, teacher, a devotee of philosophy, a person of philosophical temperament, especially one who is patient, wise, and stoical.
Right.
An alchemist or devotee of occult science,
Right.
a person who establishes the ideology of a cult or movement.
Interesting.
Which one are you, if any, and why?
So this is interesting because I don't. All those definitions are lacking somewhat. I would say I take a bit of everything from those definitions. There's some truth in all 4 definitions of who I am or who a philosopher is, so to speak. I think the first thing you'd have to do if you just went up to someone and asked them about a philosopher is you actually need to distinguish between classical philosophers and modern philosophy. So the classical philosophy was likes to question the nature of reality and life after death. And classical philosophy is also more linked to the idea of the spirit, like Plotinus with the one. And you think about religious mythologies and texts. And what the idea is that those archetypes from the ether, from the one or God or whatever you call it, distill into reality, and they're made manifest. And it's the manifestations of those things, and it's the application of those things that make us a philosopher. Modern philosophy is more rational and it's more material, sort of throughout the idea of the spirit, because there's no material way to explain or rational way, as far as we know it at this present age, to understand those concepts of life and death. Therefore, it becomes, in my opinion, purely an intellectual debate rather than something that seeks to help us understand who we are. Because philosophy is also fairly esoteric. Esoteric is not a negative word, it just means hidden or to be revealed. Yes. I'm all 4 of those things, and I think everyone is at some level, even if you don't align with it consciously.
Yeah. Yeah, most definitely.
Yes.
Yeah. So, and thank you for that. And I'm glad that I did choose to include the dictionary definition, because
Yeah.
the dictionary really needs to update itself, because we, as you said, we are all in our own right spiritualists, philosophers, artists, poets, you name it. We are all of them. Yeah. Depending on our audience. Yeah. Depending on our audience. So whether you are one that did the dismantling or someone else, the point is not to judge, but to take stock and reflect on the opportunities presented for us to rediscover who we are, if we didn't already know. Those were your words. Do you think or believe that people, no matter what challenges they are facing, that they always already know who they are?
Yes, I think somehow we all know who we already are. It's not a question of it doesn't exist. It's just buried beneath all the other constructs and things that we put there. And we put them in place of who we are and give ourselves an identity. And then we're scared for those identities to be taken away, because it means the loss of your life, figuratively, not literally.
Yeah.
I believe when we're born, everyone starts off with that, even though physically we lack the material comprehension to understand who we are. It's far more of an intuition. And as we get older, as we come into being from sort of this idea of just being to thinking, to this idea of oneness, to like a understanding life in a dualistic nature, I think then we have to reevaluate that again and come back into the one, this idea of living in the space of thought and the idea of duality, but understanding that duality is just two halves of one whole. And when I say this, what I'm talking about is the fact that we build up a sense of right and wrong, or good and evil, and that serves a purpose and a function. But if we don't begin to understand above and beyond this idea of good and evil, the reasons why we've created, why we have good and why we have evil, because one can't exist without the other, then we can't come to an understanding of how to just live. If you think about it this way, if we didn't know good and we didn't know evil, you would just be living in existence or being. You'd be living from the true self, and there would be no understanding of I have to do this or that. It just flows. The idea of loving just flows. Whereas the idea of thinking in a rational world about being good or being evil creates judgment, but also doesn't give us the opportunity to understand it as simply a way of existing or being. Rather, it becomes a sort of moralistic nature. And there's nothing wrong with virtues, but virtues coming from a place of being are things that are done without expectation. Whereas the idea of good and evil are done with either the expectation of some reward in this life or the next life, in the sense.
Yeah. Staying with the Greek philosopher Plato, who 427 BC is considered to be one of the greatest philosophers of all time. He's one of my favorite.
Yeah.
And so here's a little something that I want to share. So Plato's concept of heaven.
Yeah.
Not surprisingly, Plato's heaven is one in which man is free from the imperfect physical material world.
Yeah.
Plato believed that man is primarily made up of soul, and that man's soul is trapped in a body, much like being trapped in a prison. This is the basis for Plato's phrase soma sema, which means the body is a prison or tomb for the soul. To Plato, salvation occurs when the soul is set free from this prison body. The soul is then free to live in the realm of pure forms, and there it can behold the absolute good, the pure form. And with knowing that, I've got a scripture here, and it's from Psalms 139, verse 23 and 24. And it says, "Search me, God, and know my heart. Test me and know my anxious thoughts. See if there is any offensive way in me, and lead me in the way everlastingly." The boy who never knew that in that critical moment, that crisis point, that breaking point, that there was someone, something bigger, grander, and greater than you. Hence, in your words, you reached for the Bible because you knew that there was wisdom in those words that could transform your darkness, your uncertainty, hopelessness, helplessness into light and better days. And I'm mindful of the time. And Nat, if you had one message to give the world so that they could know what you now know and never knew, and this platform, this Soul to Soul project, is the only platform in which you had to give that message, what would it be and why?
Okay. If I had one thing to say to anyone on this platform about sort of this idea of something being greater than beyond us, and taking into context what you said from both Plato and the passage from Psalms that you've just read out, I would say that both are, I would say, searching for, I would refer to more as searching for oneself. You can call it God, or you can say your true self. I would say searching for that which provides you with that sort of that inner compass, that inner belonging that is above and beyond the scientific method, or above and beyond what we consider rational in this age. I would say I would say give yourself the freedom to ask questions, to question even why you believe something. Ask yourself, why is it that you believe in what you believe? I would start with, for example, I believe this, but do I really have faith in it? Do I actually, do I believe it because I was taught to believe it, or do I read it somewhere and I said this is the truth, or did I actually ask myself, do I believe in this? Did I reach deep within? Did I ask God or ask myself, what does this mean? I would also say research is an excellent thing. Is just because someone makes a statement, does that mean that it's the right interpretation? There are 1,001 ways to look at a piece of text and interpret its understanding. People have been struggling with this for years. As I use the example of, let me start with the Plato example. There is some truth in my opinion, what Plato said about the soul. However, we can't unanimously say that a material existence is intrinsically evil. We can't be that's a very Gnostic approach to understanding the material world and the spiritual world. There's a reason why we inhabit a body, whether it was a choice of ours or someone else gave us the illusion of the choice. In some way, living in the material existence still helps the greater portion of humanity and the greater soul of humanity actually understand itself. So there's a reason for everything, and there's a benefit to everything, but we have to make it a benefit. And then secondly, I would say when we do search our thoughts, as it's written in Psalms, we can ask God to search our thoughts, but are we asking ourselves to search our thoughts? The reason I want to make this distinction is you can go back in the Bible or another religious text and say God said this or God didn't say that. This is a righteous man and an unrighteous man. Ask yourself, is that definition of God align with what you understand as being a part of the whole, a part of that divinity, a part of love? Therefore, you must make a separate distinction to what someone else's God is saying to you and what your own God is saying to yourself.
Very, very powerful response. Very powerful response. And I like how you touched on the distinction and search me, God. Why is it that God has to search you? Is that what that text is saying and asking? When we know we can be responsible for searching our own self, because we know, because we're living in that body of who we are. Yeah. So that's a very powerful. And again, we're looking at definitions and distinctions. So that's homework for you guys tonight when you're searching yourself and seeking answers. Whatever religious denomination you follow, or even if you base your whole existence on the law of the universe, whoever it is that you look to for that outlet to define your existence. So here, Nat, we have a question here. Would you say that there is a blending of a metaphysical alignment in this modern philosophy you're referring to? And the reason why they've asked is because there seems to be, at least to me, this is I Am Valence, in American society, a propensity of blending of the materialistic and spirituality. And that is why she asked.
I'm going to answer. I just need to grab my charge. Hold on.
Okay. So for those of you, you can go follow Nat at Instagram, Natty Chin.
Natty Chin.
Natty Chin, sorry.
Natty, yeah.
And if you can go and look on his blog, which is mylifelearning.dot.blog.wordpress.com. He's got some great stuff over there. Listen to his if you follow him, you can hear him do some of his poetry live. You can read some of his poetry in his profile page, and go follow him. I hope you're enjoying us so far. We've got 5 minutes, or I say 2. I can post the link. Yes, I will post the link. Yeah. So we've only got 5 minutes, Mr. Nate. So with that said, I don't know what's running out there.
So yeah. Okay.
Yeah, you'll be all right. We're you've spun it around. Yeah. So if you can answer that question in a minute.
Yeah. Okay.
The propensity of blending. Yeah.
So the question was about blending materialism and
spirituality.
Okay. In the Western world, let's say America, because you mentioned I Am Valence, America. It's true, there is a blending. One, it's because people are searching for something more outside themselves, and some people have tried the traditional approach and they want to try something different. It doesn't work for them. But unfortunately, like everything else, spirituality is merely a tool, the adoption of practices to help us understand ourselves. So when you get, I'll give an example. Yoga is a good example of a practice that's been adopted and endorsed by Western society. It has many benefits, but a practitioner of yoga doesn't necessarily, someone who practices yoga doesn't necessarily make them wise. And an example is that many of the things that come over to Western society are sort of diluted. Yoga has many benefits: breathing techniques, discipline, flexibility, but a lot of the other inner teachings are lost. If you think about the concept of yoga as an example, yoga is actually universal. It's not just confined to a series of poses and positions. It actually can be adopted and applied to anything in life. And there are many types of different yoga. Some of them are devotional. Some of them are to do with the mind. There's like Kali yoga. There's Brahma yoga, which is the word which means God yoga. And none of them necessarily involve physical postures. Devotional yoga, for example, can be used to talk about priests or someone who's a religious devotional. Yoga in terms is just a practice that can be applied to anything where there's deep contemplation to gain a particular insight. And the physical aspect of yoga is just one portion of that. In fact, it's like entry level bit of that in terms of trying to understand yourself. But the problem is when you blend material.
I've got just under 1 minute left, my dear, and I don't want to lose this recording.
Yeah. When you blend materialism with any spiritual practice, you only get a fraction of that which the original teachers wanted to impart upon their students. So it has become popular, but because we lack the patience and discipline to actually understand what it really means, we only get like a fraction of that which the intended teaching was taught.
Yeah. Anything further, I Am Valence, follow Nat and anyone else, and you can get all the answers you need from him regarding spirituality. But at this point, I just want to say thank you, Nat, and everybody else who tuned in. I'm going to say it was a pleasure interviewing you, and I look forward to all the great stuff you have coming. But for me, Diana Lewis, your host, and Natty Chin.
Chin.
we're out of here. And any questions, please follow him and he'll give you the best responses he can. All right. Thank
Great.
you very
Thanks,
much,
everyone.
Nick.
Thanks.
Cheers.
Thank you. Cheers.